Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and you are about to watch my most flavorful episode ever. Literally. Last year, we ran the Great Eldraine Bake-off. This asked people from all across the internet to bake goods themed to Eldraine and send pictures of them to us. There were a lot of great entries, but the winners was unbelievable. It was this food token that looked just like the food token from Eldraine. The winning team dropped the pie by the office for us to all try, and it was amazing. And I got to meet Kate Roberts. She's got a degree in baking, and she's been in all kinds of restaurants in the greater Seattle area for years. So for today's episode, I reached out to her and asked if she could make something special, and she agreed. So yes, you're getting a cooking episode of Good Morning Magic.
Hi, my name is Kate Roberts. Thanks for joining us today. We're making a soft roll pull-apart showpiece themed around the 5 colors of mana. It's made of 5 filled, colored, and braided breads situated around a central golden loaf. To get our central loaf nice and gold, we are using an edible seaweed-based glitter. So you knead it in all the way through and it gets fully distributed, and then when you cut into the bread, the whole bread sparkles. It's absolutely beautiful. For the white, we're doing a manchego bread that is swirled with camembert. For blue, we're gonna do a blueberry bread with a blueberry mascarpone filling. For black, we're keeping it classy with a chocolate bread and a chocolate hazelnut spread. For the red, we're doing a zesty tomato bread and garlic with a sun-dried tomato and roasted garlic filling. We're keeping it simple for the green with a pesto bread and a pesto filling. And for our last loaf, we're doing the golden loaf with bacon and cheddar, and it's sure to be a crowd pleaser. All right, I've got my apron on, so let's get started. We pre-made our dough so we can jump right in. Look in the description for a great soft roll recipe. And if you've never made bread before, this is a perfect one to learn on. So you wanna make sure you have bread flour and not any other kind of flour because it has a higher gluten content and doesn't clump up when you're rolling things out. Take your dough and you wanna just dump it out onto your surface. This dough is nice. You don't have to pre-flour your surface to get it out. It won't stick too bad. It tends to stick to itself more than it does to other things. For the smaller loaves, I found that 12 ounces is a really good size. So I'm gonna portion this to about 5 12-ounce loaves. The center loaf is going to be 1 pound, 4 ounces. The easiest way to portion dough I have found is to make a long strip. And then once you get one, so you know like this is about 12 ounces, you can just keep chopping about the same amount. So we have 12 ounces here, so now I know that's about 12 ounces. Always keep the dough you're not working with covered so that it doesn't dry out. Here you go, 5 loaves of bread. So 5 little mana buns. And we have this much left to do the main loaf. This size makes it so that it's big enough that it's clearly the centerpiece, but it doesn't detract from the swirling braids of colored mana, which is really the showstopper of this piece. Now this one eventually I am gonna want a nice smooth top for it, but I'm kneading a bunch of fillings into it, so again, it doesn't really matter that much right now. And then you just have a little bit extra bread you can play with. All right, so we're gonna start with the central loaf because it has so much bacon in it, it takes longer to proof than the other ones. So get your 1 pound 5, just leave the rest of your little mana buns right there. You wanna kind of press it out. Avoid ripping it as much as possible because again, you don't wanna rip the gluten any more than you have to. But you want to kind of stretch it out pretty thin so that you can get everything in there that you need. I've used 10 grams, or I will be using 10 grams of golden glitter. Bacon, about a cup. Just enough to sort of spread it over nicely. And then you want about a half a cup to a cup of cheese. You just sort of spread it all nice and over. I used cheddar because it kind of has that orangey goldish look to it. I kind of just roll it a little bit and tuck it because then it stays inside while I start kneading it, and the dough will start to break down as you knead stuff into it and get a little bit difficult to work with. So the longer I can keep everything inside, the better. And it's gonna get messy, it's gonna get dirty, it's gonna get ugly. Keep working it until it comes back. The nice thing about bread is that it's forgiving. It's easy. Like, it really is. You can mess up everything. And at the end, you will generally still have bread. So you see how it's starting to knead in, but it's very clumpy. We got a lot of glitter here, and not a lot there, and chunks of cheese. So you basically just wanna keep working it until it's homogeneous. It's starting to get there. I wanna add the mascarpone in. I don't necessarily wanna add it at the beginning. You can, but the mascarpone is definitely going to make the bread break apart a little bit, and it's nice to kind of already have it started with your fillings in there. So again, I'm gonna kind of spread it out just a little bit. I have a precise amount of mascarpone I'm putting in because it is a lot more liquidy, and if you put in too much, your bread won't come back together. Make sure that anything you're adding is at room temperature or the same temperature as your bread. So for the mascarpone, I just let it sit out for a little bit, and now I'm going to be adding 1.5 ounces to this. So So you kind of want to do the same thing and just sort of fold it up. With the mascarpone, it's definitely, until it gets kneaded in there, it's gonna get kind of, you'll see. It gets a little ugly, but that's okay, we still love it. But you see how it's kind of getting all grimy all over the place and not really sticking together? That is absolutely normal. But basically you just keep kneading until it all picks itself back up. Now what we want to do is, you see how it's all kind of just not really pretty on top? We want to rest it for a little bit, maybe 5 minutes or so, and then you'll come through and round it and shape it. So now we want a nice smooth top. So what I kind of do is I sort of move it around with my hands like this, and you want to fold underneath. Basically you want to stretch the gluten around the outside of the bread and tuck it under so that when it proves, it goes up. So you just kind of pass it back and forth while tucking under. Now, for me, I'm used to baking in industrial ovens, which are quite a bit larger than home ovens. So instead of using a baking sheet, I have lined my rack with tin foil. You don't need any spray, you don't need any cornmeal, you don't need any grease. That's another really nice thing about this bread, is that once it's done baking, it sticks to itself and not really anything else. So you just want to kind of put it down right in the center and then cover it with a cloth to prove while you do the others. All right, so we're gonna start with the green loaf first. I do them in a specific order because they prove at different rates. So you want to do the slower prover first. So get one of your little buns. I do 1.5 ounces of pesto. That seems to be a good amount to get a nice color, a nice flavor without making the dough too wet. And then you kind of want to do the same thing where you just sort of fold it all up as best you can. It will just make your life a little bit easier, but the pesto likes to come out. So with green, I definitely went with the pesto. It's very nature, very natural, very herby, very planty. The way that I find works best for kneading is you just kind of palm it, roll it over, bring it back, roll it over, bring it back. So you see, nice and homogeneous. It basically all looks like one color. So now we pull it back in, just like we did with the other one. It doesn't matter if this one's smooth on top, we're gonna flatten it out and fill it anyway. And that's your green manna. All right, so next we're doing our white bread. The white is really nice. It's a pure white bread with a golden halo of cheese on top when it bakes. It's very pretty. So I'm putting 3/4 ounce of mascarpone in here to make it a little bit softer. The manchego, about 1 cup of cheese. I choose manchego because it just has a very good umami, unctuous kind of cheese flavor to it. Like, it is the most cheesiest flavored cheese I've ever had. So that's all mixed together. My bench is clean. Just gonna round it right up again. Throw it back under. For our black bread, we are doing chocolate. Now, I use a very high quality 70% chocolate couverture. You don't have to use that. I just happen to have it on hand. Any dark chocolate you have on will do. The one thing about chocolate you need to be aware of is if it is a couverture or if it's high quality, it will seize when it's introduced to any kind of moisture. So make sure whatever implements you're using are completely dry and knead it in quickly. If you're concerned about your ability to knead it in quickly before it creates chips, add just like a drop of canola or vegetable oil to it and you won't have to worry about it. Take our bread, do the same thing, press it out a little bit. I add about 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of chocolate and about 1/2 ounce of mascarpone just to make it a little bit softer. And this one, unlike the other ones, you will need to scrape up the chocolate at some point, but I want to move it quickly so that it doesn't seize. With the black, I went back and forth a couple times because the only way to get something truly black is with squidding. And I couldn't think of a lot of great flavors that I knew to go with squidding. So I went with the black, even though it's dark brown, not black black. But the contrast with all the other loaves makes it look really obvious. That's looking pretty good. It's pretty solid. It's pretty much just one color. Round it up a little bit and stick it under my towel. All right, so now we're gonna do our blueberry bread. Blue is a little bit difficult for me just because there's not a lot of blue foods and there's really not any blue foods that come out true blue. So blueberry was sort of the only option for this one. And even with that, I needed to use a little bit of food coloring because otherwise the blue just doesn't pop against the other colors. So I'm putting in 1/2 ounce of the blueberry and 2 drops of food coloring. I made my own blueberry compote, but you can buy a blueberry filling or a blueberry jam real easy, and generally they're pretty good. The filling is so moist that it tends to account for the fact that it's a drier bread. And if we add any more moisture to this bread with its moist filling, it just all over the place. Originally, I was trying really hard to do this without food coloring because I tend to not like food coloring in my food. I like the natural colors of the food to shine. But for something like this, I felt those more unnatural colors fit better since I'm trying to represent colors of mana. That looks pretty well homogeneous. I'm gonna put it under the towel. Okay, so on to the tomato bread. So for our tomato bread, we are going to put a ½ ounce of tomato paste in it and roasted garlic. And with the red bread, I was having a lot of difficulty getting the red color. So I ended up using a little bit of food coloring. I add a bit of orange to it instead of just red to make it that kind of fiery red as opposed to sweet red. Because I feel like red mana is a little bit fiery. We have the drop of red and about a ½ drop of orange. The red has actually been the most temperamental, difficult bread to work with. The red is also the most sticky and it breaks down the most while you're kneading it. It'll be the one that you're most likely to think you've ruined, but you probably haven't. That looks pretty good to me. All right, so these are our mana buns. You're gonna start, you have a smoother side and a not smooth side. So you want the smooth side to go down on your board. This bread doesn't need a lot of flour, but you're gonna want just a little bit. You probably can't see my hand, but you do it from pretty high up because then you get a better distribution of flour. It's more even. Put your bread right down in the middle. A little bit more. Okay, so we wanna kind of form it into a square here. That'll help us out a lot. So the way I do that is I kind of pinch the thick part and sort of spread it out to the edges. Because I have way more dough here than here. It's a lot thinner here than it is here. So you kind of are just pushing it out to the corners. And then you notice it's much thicker in the middle than on the sides. So when you roll, you want to do a lot more pressure on the middle and then ease up as you go. You want to kind of keep making it straight. And you want to roll this out to 9 by 15. It should be a pretty thin bread. You want a lot of filling and a lot of swirls. Because when you cut into this bread, it's just all swirled all throughout. It's really cool. And for this bread, we're gonna start with a little thin layer of tomato sauce on the bottom. And you can make your own or you can buy one. There's a lot of really good tomato sauces out there. And you just want a little bit for a little moisture, something for the toppings to stick to. We're going to keep about a thumb's width edge at the top, which is where we're gonna put our egg wash to seal the bread. So now I'm going to sprinkle on my garlic and then the sun-dried tomatoes, which I have just chopped. I just got some sun-dried tomatoes from the store and I just chopped them up. I get the garlic distributed with the tomatoes and the sauce. And then we're gonna fold it over. So you kind of do this pinch fold thing. This bread's a little bit different because it's got like chunks in it as opposed to just a smoother filling. So you kind of want to do this thing where you'll like pull back and then you lift it up and push it down, because that way you don't just mush all the filling to the top. And when you're rolling it, you want to make sure you roll it all the way across, back and forth, as opposed to rolling one side up and then the other. It'll make a much more even spiral this way. Sometimes if your corner's not going right, you can just do it against your hand and you get a more even roll that way. You get it to this point here and you want to add your egg wash. And just a little bit, not too much. You want just enough to kind of make it moist. If you do too much, your bread will definitely tear or not stick or just be generally not good. So you want to kind of stretch it over and then pinch. So stretch it to get a nice tight seal and pinch. I sort of stretch it ahead and then I pinch back here. And then we're gonna flatten that down, roll it over, reshape it into a nice little straight roll. And then we're just gonna cut it in half. You can use a bench knife or you can use a chef's knife. I highly recommend getting a bench knife though. They are very, very helpful in the kitchen. I leave just that little bit still attached because that's where I'm gonna braid it. You wanna turn it so that the cut part is up and you can see all that pretty filling. And then we're just gonna do a twist. So it's a little bit different than like hair because bread sort of falls apart, so you kind of have to play with it. I will twist it twice and then I move it back over. And when you're all the way done, pinch those together. And now we're gonna twist it back up. So this is basically, we're making a knot. All we're doing, you wanna kind of get the tip underneath, but then all we're doing is just rolling this up like that. And then you take this part and you tuck it under. And that gives you a nice little knot. So this is what it should look like when you're done. You have your golden center loaf in the middle and then white, blue, black, red, green. We're gonna cover this and let it prove for a little bit and then put it in the oven and bake it. All right, so this is our bread after it's been proved. We're gonna add one more final touch to this golden loaf. I'm gonna put a little bit of egg wash on just that one to give it a little bit more color because I do kind of want to bring out that golden. And then the last piece, we have the planeswalker symbol. I made this out of a streusel paste and then I just rolled it super thin and I had a cutout and I just cut around it And I'm gonna stick that right on top of that center loaf, on top of the egg wash. And then it's into the oven to bake. You want to bake until the center loaf's internal temperature is 180 degrees minimum. So you want right around between 180 and 190 for all of the breads, but they should come out right about the same temperature at the same time. So this is our final product, a pull apart tear and share loaf. I want to give a shout out to Gavin for giving me this opportunity, to my sister Sarah for helping me design and make the bread, and to my roommate Sizzle the Clown for helping me script and shoot this because I was a little nervous. Like and subscribe, and if you want more Magic the Gathering themed baking content, give us a comment down below.
Those look amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to create them. I would love to know what you thought about this episode, so please leave a comment below. I'll talk with you again on Monday, and in the meantime, may every bite of magic have plenty of flavor for you. You got this.